an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Ghostwater Chapters 13, 14, and 15. In these chapters, Eithan confronts Longhook. It's amusing. And I really hope that Lindon gets Dross back, or I'm going to burn a motherfucker down. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode. So we have Toast in the chat. Devin is in the chat, who says, I finally caught up on episodes. Devin, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started reading this series because I was covering it, if I'm not mistaken. And I think you said you read like all the books in like a week, which, on the one hand, I'm very jealous of the fact that you got to just binge them. On the other hand, I have been enjoying these so much that I think if I binged them and was done in a week, I'd be sad because it's too quick. So I do feel in some ways that covering them more slowly has been a treat in its way. And yeah, thank you, Andrew, so much for commissioning these. I know I've been saying it, but this is like in my top 5 things that I've covered. It's such a fun escape. And I am just... This is a delight. I'm very excited about it. And these chapters are so fucking packed, you guys. I think, I haven't done a full page count, but I think next episode is the last Ghostwater episode. And then I'm going to be getting into the next book, which I don't remember what the title is for the next book, but yeah. So these are just flying by anyway. So chapter 13 starts off from Longhook's perspective, which pretty much I'm seeing a bit of a pattern with this author. Andy says next book is Underlord. Ooh, well, that makes sense because we've got Lindon at Trugold by the end of this section of chapters. So what's the next step? But whenever we go to a different perspective in these books, it feels like it is preceding the death of that character. That is to say, if it's not a character who is involved in the main gang, right? So as soon as we're in Longhook's POV, I'm just like, ooh, TikTok, motherfucker. And he has this thing where the dream, what are they called? The dream seers? They told him that he has a destiny with a capital D. They say that he will be the next Red Moon Hall sage. And he has no reason to think that they're going to be wrong. This is the thing. When people get too fixated on that sort of thing, they really forget about free will. And I guess that I'm saying forget. I don't know that he even believes in free will, so I could just be talking shit here. But I mean, this idea that he essentially sees this fight coming with Eithan and 2 other underlords, so 3-1. And he is so certain that the dream readers are correct, that his thought process is not, oh God, how am I going to get out of this one? His thought process is, ooh, I can't wait to see how I'm going to get out of this one. He's so sure he's going to be fine that it's like he's a spectator in his own life. Like, he doesn't feel stakes. It's more like he's watching a movie the way you and I would watch a movie about Thor, where Thor is about to go down with Hela. And you're like, oh, this looks really bad, but I have no doubt he's going to win. Let's see how he does it. And it's bonkers. It's bonkers to me, this idea of like destiny and being so certain of it that you really stop feeling fear in the way that you maybe should. I almost guarantee if we talk to him, he would see the fact that he doesn't feel fear as an advantage, right? That's like a nice side effect. But he apparently, I'm not sure how common knowledge the Abaddon are, because it seems like nobody really talks about them. It's not as if they are gods in the way that we are used to hearing that term. They're not worshipped. Their names aren't known, it doesn't seem. So I guess that Longhook doesn't know, and Abaddon can just wave a wand and be like, wake up to the bleeding phoenix, and that bitch wakes up. So he's like kind of thinking over in the beginning of this chapter how she woke up real sudden. That was bad news for us. God, shit went really left. This is not how it was supposed to work. And just seems to be bewildered by that fact. And I wonder what the dream readers see when the Abaddons are part of the story. Do the Abaddons seem invisible to them? Do they not see them as a factor? Do they manifest as something else in dreams and appear to be like a person that they simply can't identify? Because the dream readers didn't see the phoenix rising, right? And like, Longhook, buddy, if they didn't see this, and Eithan says they would have seen this a year ahead of time if this were the way things had been gonna go. So something clearly changed destiny or whatever. If they didn't see it rising, and yet it rose, maybe your destiny isn't a guarantee, Longhook. I'm just saying. Look, I really would think that would occur to him if you are putting all of your eggs in the destiny basket and them dream readers were wrong as hell about a major fucking event. Just maybe for me, it would shake my faith a little bit in my destiny. That's all I'm saying. And it doesn't seem to have even entered his mind that shit isn't going to go according to plan for him. I don't get it. But all right, Longhook, you do you and wind up dead. I'm fine with that. I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. So, Devin says, seems like dream readers are able to read the first draft of fate while Abaddon are the editors. I love that, Devin. That's a beautiful way to say that. And yeah, again, if they didn't see it, maybe they're not infallible. Longhook, just God, come on, man, use your head. Even now, he did not doubt them. Of course. And he would continue walking this road he had paved for himself. The sacred arts were all about sacrifices. The more you put in time or resources, the more you got out. And he had given up everything. His friends, his former sect, his children, even his name. And I have so many questions about that, but for another day. So he gets he gets distracted by this cloud showing up, and all of a sudden there's Eithan. Longhook tries to attack him, and Eithan dodges it pretty easily and is like, slacking a little bit there, huh? Injury bothering you? What's going on, buddy? And I love how Eithan makes it a point to tell him that it was a high gold that nearly killed him with that like cannon thing. He just wants to rub it in. I love how petty Eithan is, honestly. Like, Eithan is such a shit in so many ways, but I love him so much anyway. he is just, he's like pettiness paired with such competence that it makes for like a perfect asshole, because it's somebody who's so smug that it infuriates you, but they can back it up. And that's the worst kind of smug, is somebody who they are almost always actually able to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And there's nothing more infuriating. I love him so much. So Eithan tells him that they've agreed not to interfere, these other two. I think they want to see me suffer, so they were more than happy to let me fight alone against you. And Longhook's like, why would you fight me alone? And Eithan says, I want to show you something. So, I love how this starts. First of all, Longhook tries to he tries to sort of like rush Eithan. Eithan rushes him first, but he tries to sort of like come at him in kind. And he winds up just getting tossed through the air. He lands and he's looking around like, where is he? Where is he? Where is he? And then there's just a tap and Eithan's right fucking there. Which is just, again, it's so petty. Does Eithan have to fight this way? No, he does not. But he enjoys this shit because he loves turning these high and mighty self-important assholes into his little bitch. And I can't blame him for that at all. Not even a little bit. Oh my God, can you imagine how satisfying this would be? No wonder Eithan keeps his shit to himself. He's got these weapons with his like pure madra attacks and the well of madra at his disposal, which now that we have seen what Lindon's doing with his cores being huge, imagine how big Eithan's must be. And he keeps it so secret that these people keep coming at him thinking that they know what they're dealing with. And it's just so deeply satisfying in my soul. I love it. So, long story short, Eithan winds up being able to take one of his attacks and like roll the madra around his body like a hurricane and shoot it back at Longhook. The Blood Shadow attacks Eithan, and Eithan, and he has like this like pure madra, what do you call it, armor on, and the Blood Shadow breaks when it tries to attack him. He tries to do a bunch of things, and the whole time Longhook's looking at his weapons, and he's just like, this is insane. There's no way that anybody can sustain these techniques, because it would take an amount of madra that's like boggling. So this is something that he'll clearly only be able to do for the next few seconds, and then his defenses will be down again, because he doesn't understand exactly what it is that Eithan's working with, which I find really interesting. We know that you can do a spiritual scan of another person. We know that you can veil yourself from another person. If I'm not mistaken, it was established in the last book that Eithan isn't really veiling himself because his pure madra doesn't make much of an impression. So everybody seems to assume that he's veiling when he's not even bothering to do that because he doesn't have to. Now, we see how Dross reacts when he goes inside Lindon and it's like, oh, it's really roomy in here. Wow. So the fact that nobody else has seemed to notice how roomy Lindon's cores are indicates to me that's not part of the spiritual scan. Maybe it is if you become a higher level, but so far I feel like he's only run into underlords, and I don't know that they have been able to look at him and be like, oh yeah, or was Jai Daisho an underlord, or was he an overlord? He was an underlord, right? I think he was an underlord. So yeah, I'm curious if there's anybody that Eithan would speak to who would know, just from talking to him, how huge his core capacity is, his madra capacity. But anyway, so the whole thing ends. This thing is really amazing. He shoots back the technique that Longhook tried to use. He shoots back the Blood Shadows copied technique. All of this is really taking its toll. And Longhook starts to be like, oh God, I think I'm gonna have to do something that I promised I would never do. His blood shadow is already like falling apart and weak, and he's realizing it's not going to do him any good anymore because Eithan's clearly defending against it really easily. So he decides to eat it, for lack of a better term. He consumes it. Now, I assume that Yaren can also do this at some point. I think this is really interesting. And it's also interesting to me how Eithan is delighted that Longhook chooses to do this. I have a lot of questions about that as well. Like, is he excited to watch somebody do it because he's never seen it done and wasn't sure it could be done? Is he excited to see it because this, in his opinion, will weaken Longhook, or it's an admission that Longhook is weakened? Is it just because he enjoys watching his enemy go through all of his weapons at his disposal and then still fail? There could be all kinds of reasons for this. But obviously Eithan is just very excited about this moment. So Longhook consumes his blood shadow, really seems to think, all right, this is going to give me the edge I need. And he shifts one foot, stomps onto the ground, and delivers a pulse of madra. It says, golden earth aura flared beneath him, responding to his call. Fingers of stone rose from the earth, each the size of a man's torso. They closed around Eithan, grasping at him. He twisted to avoid each one, leaping and turning as new pillars of rock broke the mud and tried to grab him around the waist. Longhook felt the armor around Eithan fade away as the Aurelius shifted his focus. Now the Red Moon Underlord seized his chance. Holding his two palms a few inches apart, he crafted one final meteor breath. It gathered a chunk of yellow earth madra tinted with the red of blood, and he poured the last wisp of his soul fire into it. The colorless flame soaked in, empowering it, and the technique became brighter and more solid, almost as dense as a forger technique, but raging with power. So he sends that out, and Eithan's still dodging the pillars of stone and whatnot. It streaked through the night, trailing red and gold light, bright as dawn. Eithan extended a hand. Longhook saw what happened as clearly as a painting. Pale gray soul fire swirled in Eithan's palm for an instant, vanishing as it soaked into a technique. Pure madra gathered, condensed, and empowered by soul fire so that it shone blue-white. It drew to a point in front of Eithan's hand, then fired out in a finger-thick line. The bar of pure madra pierced his meteor breath, punching through without resistance. Longhook's technique burst like a bubble, exploding in a devastating wave of force that knocked Eithan off balance and tore a crater in the earth. But it hadn't hit. Eithan spun once in the air, but landed on his feet, umbrella braced on his shoulder. At first, Longhook thought the shooting pain in his spirit was a side effect of exhaustion. It was only by chance that he glanced down to see the line of pure madra spearing him straight through the center. It did nothing to his body, but his core shattered. A cold pain started sharp and only got worse, spreading through his spirit. His ruler technique faltered and failed, stone fingers crumbling to the ground. Oh, shit! Eithan just did what our buddy Zeal had happen to him. Except the difference is, Longhook does not survive this motherfucker. And I am so curious who did this to Zeal, because was it Eithan? I wouldn't be totally shocked if it turned out that it was Eithan. I don't know, it seems like if Eithan's going to do this, he's going to kill you. It feels like unlikely to me that he would just leave somebody alive after doing this to them. But I don't know. Certainly could. And finally, he says something to Eithan like, my fate does not end here. And Eithan just says, everything ends. And points upwards. The power rising from him tapered off, leaving a mass of pure madra hovering in the sky far over Eithan's head. It gathered into a single point, so dense it looked blue-white instead of colorless, like a newborn star. Longhook stared into it for a moment, enjoying its beauty. Then he closed his eye. There is something so amazing about, you're about to kill a man, and you pull your weapon out, and he's just like, man, I know I'm about to die, but that is really pretty. That is a full victory. Never saw it coming. I am sorry, but not sorry. Longhook, we hardly knew you, and good luck. Wherever it is that you fucking wind up. So, then we go to Yaren and Mercy. I love the two of them together. They are such opposites, and it's really hilarious. It's sort of like going back in time a little bit to Lindon and Yaren, because Lindon is capable enough now that, and that's not to say that Mercy isn't, but she keeps it much more under wraps. Lindon was capable in his way, but he certainly had a lot of catching up that he needed to do. And Mercy is so odd because, she feels like she's not capable, but it's very clear that she has some amazing techniques at her disposal, plus she's got awesome tools. Because she's got, this void key, evidently, and she has also got the opening in her spirit that, an Underlord would normally have, because, as it turns out, her path opens that earlier so that she's able to use it. So there are a lot of ways in which she's, weirdly slightly more advanced or just better prepared than Yaren, but she's certainly not as good a fighter, and yet she's got so much heart, So this next section begins with the two of them hiding from these fucking dragons, and Yaren has had it. She is so tired of hiding. She's over it, man. She's just as far as she is concerned, this isn't what she was built to do. And if stepping out is going to get her killed, then so fucking be it. I would rather die standing up against a dragon than hiding under a fucking scripted blanket like a little bitch. So she gets out of there, and I love Mercy just being like, what are you doing? And right before she steps out, her blood shadow begins to depart on its own. And it's a really interesting moment because Yaren grabs it and pulls it back in. But the fact that it did that independently really freaks her out. She's just like, what happens when I fall asleep? Is it just going to fucking walk on out of me and attack a friend? Which is a valid question. It didn't even occur to me that maybe it'd be able to do something while she slept. And now that that possibility has been introduced, I hate it. And I don't appreciate that being even mentioned. And I would like for the author to take it back, please. So that is sort of what pushes her to go up against these dragons in the open, because she's feeling kind of helpless when this thing almost escapes, and it just sort of eggs her on to try and take control of the overall situation. So she steps out and is like, so you want to dance, motherfucker? And the dragon obviously is like, okay, this is clearly a trap because nobody's enough a lunatic to just come out here and just challenge me. And then it realizes, oh no, she's that crazy. It's fine. And they go at it for a second. And I love how she tries this technique again, which is supposed to look like the wind. And it's like just very sloppy still. It just doesn't quite do what it's supposed to do. And it manages to hit her with its tail. It's mentioned that these dragons haven't used any fire that she's seen. They use claws, teeth, and tail as their weapons. Mercy, after Yaren almost gets like her spine broken on a tree, she pops up and she says, "I'm sorry, she's training. I'm Mercy. You are?" And the dragon just begins to like draw in a breath. And it says, "Black madra stretched away from Mercy and stuck onto the limbs of the tree just above Yaren's head. She pulled herself away just in time as a spray of fiery golden madra incinerated the grass, leaves, and scripted blanket she'd left behind." So Yaren says to Mercy, "You want this to go faster than you could help? Hit it with your stick." Which, man, that's just something so dismissive about that. You know, hit it with your stick. And so Mercy says, "Oh, it's not a stick," and lets it take its proper form as a bow that's almost as tall as she is. "This is Eclipse, ancient bow of the Soul Seeker. It was my mother's weapon from Logold to Archlord, made from the remnant of a shadow dragon who became a sage. With this bow, my mother sealed the living volcano of Shara Khan. She destroyed the Sunlight Rebellion with this bow and bound together the 13 islands into one." Wow. Okay. So, she basically winds up trapping this dragon. And at one point, it's trying to get out, and Yaren attacks it again, and Mercy's like, "It wasn't going to hurt us." She's a little bit like, that was unnecessary. To which Yaren's like, "It's still trying to kill us. It might not be free yet, but nevertheless." And I see both their points on this one, but I do enjoy the fact that Mercy is so merciful. Who knew? She asks Yaren what the story is about her sword, and Yaren doesn't really have a story. It says the sage had never referred to his weapon by name. She didn't even know if it had one. He had made her use it to chop firewood by hand when he was trying to build up her muscles. He used it because he was too lazy to hunt down an axe. Instead of talking about that, Yaren asked Mercy another question. "How about your path? Aspects of shadow and force, if I'm not wrong." And Mercy says, "Oh, this is just a restriction technique." And Yaren takes her saying that as like a ducking of the question. And kind of is like, if you don't want to fucking tell me, just say you don't want to tell me. To which Mercy is genuinely like, "That's not what I meant." And she says, "I don't keep secrets. Bad for your heart." And then she pulls out this madra book. And it's covered with wild scripts that is kind of like unnerving to look at for Yaren. It gave off a menacing pressure like the shadow of a shark circling beneath the waves. "The Book of Eternal Night," Mercy announced, holding her book up proudly. "I'm on the path of 7 pages. And the first page, the Logold page," she opened the cover, revealing the first page. It looked more like a thumb-thick tablet than a piece of paper. Yaren wondered if it contained a binding. This page was choked with more incomprehensible script circles instead of plain writing. Not that Yaren would have been able to get anything from it either way. "It's the central technique from the path of the Chain Keeper," Mercy said. "Strings of shadow. There are 7 techniques in this book, 1 for each page. The path of 7 pages unites 7 techniques from 7 different shadow paths into one." I have no idea what any of that means, but I'm interested. I have nothing, though. Like, in terms of suggestion, I got nada. So, what can you do? But I really enjoy any time that something is sort of introduced without explanation, because I have total faith it will be explained eventually. I just need to be patient and wait and let it happen in its own good time. But, as of right now, I'm just kind of like, what? So, Yaren says at this point, all right, that's enough friendly time. We've been too soft on these things, now we punch through. And as she says this, Mercy says, did you say we're friends now? And Mercy is so excited. And I love how Yaren doesn't even answer her. She just looks at her. Mercy might as well be an alien, you know, the way that she's behaving. It is amazing, and I love it so much. And I really think the fact that Mercy asked Yaren that question is pretty significant to what happens next. Because this is when we get what's-her-fucking-face showing up and attacking them, for some reason thinking they're responsible for her sister's death, which I'm not really sure where she got that from. But this dragon attacks them with no provocation. And it's a bad deal for her people that she does this. It's like she is surrounded by others of her clan trying to stop her, because this is essentially like a declaration of war. But she is too ramped up and upset about her sister's death to listen to them. So she fires away, and Mercy basically puts herself between Yaren and the Underlord Dragon Woman. And it is, like I said, I think pretty significant that Mercy asked, did you say we're friends? Because I feel like I don't know that she would have put herself in that kind of harm's way. That's not to say that she wasn't already like fighting on Yaren's side, but it's a different thing when you are literally about to throw yourself in the path of an Underlord's striking technique. And I just feel like it's something that you reserve for people that you have grown to really care about. Also, I should mention that right before she does this, she says to Mercy says, second page. A phantom image flickered behind Mercy for a second, so quick that Yaren thought she might have imagined it. The violet book, turning from the first page to the second. Light dimmed about 10 feet around Mercy, as though she'd cast a bigger shadow than normal, and suddenly she was giving off the aura of a high gold. It was the quickest, most casual advancement Yaren had ever heard of. Not that it would save them. The lady shook off the true gold, hurling her striker technique at the two humans. So, yeah, she somehow advances like right away. I'm not sure how she manages this or why she hadn't already done it, if it was like available to her. But it's really funny, the quickest, most casual advancement. Like, granted, even compared to what Lindon's going through, it is still very quick and casual. But I am curious what Yaren's going to have to say, because she was like kind of already feeling like she was maybe falling behind Lindon. And when they catch up to him and he is now a true gold, I feel like she's going to have something to say about that. So at this point, Mercy gets up, puts herself between, sorry, I hit my little thing here, puts herself between Yaren and this strike. And I love the fact that Yaren's like, man, if it weren't for the fact that she is literally gonna die, I would think that she was kind of a boss for doing this at all. But this is essentially suicide, and what the hell is she thinking? And, I mean, yeah, fair. And she's doing it with just the armor of, like, the amethyst. It reminds me of the look that her mother had when she came and fought the Bleeding Phoenix, and she was like basically a giant stone woman. She was one of the crystal gems. I just wanna see a giant woman, a giant woman. So she has that just around her arm, and that's it. That's all. So she takes the hit, and both of them, they're injured. They're burnt. But it seems like the most of the impact and the heat was taken by that little bit of armor. And the fact that they're not dead, it's very clear that this dragon lady is livid. Oh, she's so mad. And finally, a true gold jumps in front of her and falls to his knees and begins pleading. And this is when Euron realizes, like, oh, right. So not only are we Skysworn, but, like, I look like I'm Red Moon Hall. She looks like she's from the Akora family. This would be really bad news for them to stir shit up with either one. And Euron wasn't going to stick around and see where the dice fell. Her steel-born iron body was drawing on her spirit to keep her limbs moving, and she positively flooded it with madra. She hauled Mercy onto her shoulder, skin screaming and tears flooding her own eyes in the pain. She gathered her master's sword and the ancient bow under one arm. Then she started jogging into the woods. If they got far enough away, she could pull the tent from Mercy's void key and hide in its veiling script. That was their only hope. For now, though, every step was agony, and she had to run. Ugh! Stressful! Okay. So we go to chapter 14. We're still at the Spirit Well, and Lindon has advanced to High Gold in his pure core. So, as he is doing this, Dross is also advancing, and Orthos is beginning to really, like, heal a lot more. Lindon was fairly certain Orthos had been fighting with sea drakes because sometimes he returned from his swims with an exultant look in his eye and scratches all over his skin. Little Blue was once again a deep ocean blue, and she scampered around like a child in a field. She played with some of the more advanced dream seeds, the ones who had taken a more solid form. The less advanced spirits were hazy and ever-shifting, and they didn't seem to have minds at all. Though it still knocked Lindon sideways when Dross said he wanted to eat some of them. And basically Dross is like, it's not eating the way that you eat, it's like merging, and I basically like take what they're made of. And when Lindon compares it to like, well, what, do you want to eat Little Blue too? He's like, no. Little Blue has a mind. These don't really have that. They're kind of like plants, which I kind of see what he means there. You know, they don't have like that kind of consciousness that she seems to have. So he gives in. Dross was confident this would be the last stage of his growth, and that after this he would qualify as a living spirit rather than a construct. Lindon was curious to see that, and just as importantly, he wanted the construct out of his spirit. Dross was taking up far too much of his time and water each day. Unfortunately, that meant he had to do the job of consuming the dream seed himself. So, Dross tells him that he can get into Lindon's madra channels. And when Lindon picks one up with his arm, his creepy little skeleton arm, Dross will be able to absorb it through that channel that will make it available to him. And Lindon tries it the first time and it does not work out. It just sort of like dissolves into nothing. But he attempts it the second time and kind of like manages to hold the arm back a bit because its instinct is clearly to just fucking consume. And that's not really what he wants to do. He's trying to draw it into himself. So he manages it the next time. And they pull into his system and he can sense the difference between these spirits and the spirits that he has like seen before. He can sense that they're more like madra, that's like pure and doesn't have any personality or anything to it yet. So Dross absorbs it, and then he forms his own core. It seems like it's like he's beginning to become like a full-on sacred artist type, which is wild. Lindon funneled as much power from the Spirit Well to Dross as he could. He didn't know if it was helping, but he reasoned that it couldn't hurt. Dross started pushing at Lindon's core. It was only a little pressure at first, but it grew stronger and stronger until Lindon had to extend his left hand and push the construct out like he was releasing a striker technique. The ball of purple light spun into the air, wobbling. Twisting lines of light formed a web through the mechanical spokes at his center, all leading back to a single spot of bright light. A madra system. He had grown madra channels and a core. So I think that is awesome. And then we have the conversation with Zeal. And Lindon asks for Zeal's opinion on how long it will be before he reaches True Gold. And Zeal says 2 more weeks. And Lindon's like, all right, well, we've got that much time, right? And Zeal's like, yeah, but you don't want to stay here. And Lindon's like, I don't. Yeah, I do. This is the best. What are you even talking about? And Zeal's like, no. You don't. Do you? And Lindon starts to get all touchy-feely. Guys, I could not stop laughing. He sits down and starts to say, well, I have this friend. And Zeal stops him and says, no, stop. We don't know each other well enough for this. Oh my God. There's something about that. Like, this reminded me of Ron Swanson saying that he likes to, like, purposely get people's names wrong when they get a little bit too chummy with him. And I don't know. This killed me. I love this. Zeal is like becoming one of my favorite characters just as much because of how the Audible narrator voices him as for the way he's written. The narrator manages to make him sound so over absolutely everything. Each conversation he has, it feels like he just can't be bothered. It's all the energy he can muster to fucking answer anyone. And I'm here for it. So he says, they don't let this easy advancement blind you. The decay of this space has begun. He says, if you're going to a deeper habitat, you'll have plenty of time if you leave now, if you don't want to be racing the hourglass with a collapsing world. And Lindon's like, okay, granted, but fuck, the spirit well has so much left. And I can't believe I'm not going to get to, like, use it all. And he fills all of the containers he can. And finally, he's about to leave. And Zeal comes over to him. And he hands him a bag with 6 bottles. And Lindon gets all teary-eyed as he puts it into his void key, and it's just like, oh my God. And Zeal has to, like, purposefully ignore him because this kid is just getting too emotional. So they leave this habitat finally, and there's the Zeal, like, agrees to be the one to deal with the sea drakes, and basically, I'll keep them off you while you head on out. And Orthos is like, oh, this guy, I love him. Man, what a badass. And they head out, and they're about to, like, just get past, and it's going to be fine. And then Orthos seems to be like, I can't, man. I'm sorry. I got to go back. Look at this. This fight is awesome. We got to go fight. And Lindon's, like, about to keep going, and then he's like, fine. And he turns around and heads out with Orthos too, just like for the sake of it, for the fun. This is a fight he would have delighted in not having to participate in. And now he's out here being like, oh, you know what? This would be a good way to pass an afternoon. What? Okay. Shit. So it says Zeal waited until the last moment to use his gate key. So he does it, and it's better than a gate stone, which breaks and can only be used once. But it was, like, given to him by his patron, as we find out, the Beast King, who I will refer to from this point forward as the Beastmaster. I hope you all are okay with that. If you're not, please send a letter to the manager. And the Beastmaster is like, hey, buddy, I'm in the middle of dinner. No problem. Did it work? And Zeal's like, nah, still broken. And Beastmaster's like, well, What can you do? We kind of figured it wouldn't work. And he's like, I am going to make that elixir. So did you bring me some water? And Zeal gives him a bottle and he's like, 1. Where's the rest of it? And Zeal's just basically like, whatever. And he doesn't push the issue. And I love the fact that this dude's eating and he's tossing the bones and his dogs are verbally arguing with each other about who gets the bones. And like, you know, they're keeping score on how much of each meal they got each time. It's very good. I really enjoyed this. So finally, he's like, all right, Zeal, well, there are a couple of golds who are being attacked by this bitch, and they're kind of screwed. Would you be interested in going and, like, fixing that? And Zeal's like, fine. Zeal is so bored of life. It's so funny. He says, oh, and BT dubs, I think there's like an underlord involved. And Zeal says, yeah, maybe I'll die. Like, it's not exactly hopeful, but like a little bit hopeful. Oh, Zeal, you're a mess. So Lindon and Orthos and Dross and Lil Blue arrive at the next station. And this next station has is it called Life Water? I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's gross. They were trying to figure out a way to like do experiments with sacred beasts. And there's a lot of like rotting bodies and tanks that used to hold beasts that have been like busted open. And there's like a weird infection that seems to be passing amongst some of the wildlife. And the infection, it's that like kind of blackness that I think was the corruption that he saw on some of the sacred beasts in the desolate wilds. And they go let's see, life well. Yes. Dross says the life well was really just a side effect of their work here. It bolsters the line of life aura inside everyone's body and can even restore youth to the elderly. This was the most rare and expensive of all the water. You'd be lucky to get a spoonful after a successful project. He flashed bright light in Lindon's face. I used the word spoon correctly there. Just thought you ought to notice. Oh, Dross. You are a droll little... Dross the Droll. That's his new title. So Lindon takes a sip of the water, and not much happens. Which is unsurprising, because Lindon is a baby. He's a literal baby. And so it's just kind of whatever. But when Orthos takes a drink, it is huge. It first causes extreme pain. It's rough. To the point where Lindon, who's bonded with him and can feel his pain, is genuinely concerned that some shit is gonna go wrong, that he is, like, injured. And he winds up, like, this stuff, like, youthifies him. It heals his shell. I mean, this has a great effect on Orthos. It's huge. The big help. And I am very excited about it because Orthos has been super fun. And I have felt bad for him being as, like, willing and in mind as he is, but unable in body to back up some of the shit that he says. So now that he will be able to back it up, like he's juvenile, I am looking forward to the shit that he is going to do, which will include jumping down a giant hole, as we see. Toast in the chat says, Orthos best boy. He is, though. Like, he's a good time. But I'm jumping past Yan Shumei. I only have 10 minutes left. God help me. Yan Shumei is one of these blood shadow bitches, and we were in her POV briefly earlier. She is weirdly, like, sure that she knows these two. She says, "You even followed me to another world. Tell Anagi he was too late. I have everything I need. You were days too slow. I have all the blood I need. I look forward to seeing your bodies buried beneath Hearthway." And then she, like, crushes a gate stone and just disappears. And Lindon is just like, is it just me, or did she, like, think we were the wrong people? And Orthos is like, yeah, that bitch is nuts. And this is when Orthos drinks it and transforms. He laughed, bounding to his feet and running in a circle like a puppy. Lindon had heard more laughter out of him since coming to Ghostwater than in the last year. So Dross is like, "Hey, what's up? Can I get some of that?" So Lindon absorbs him and cycles some of this water. And as they are, let's see, not only had it helped heal some of the damage the Black Flame had done to Orthos' spirit, but it had sharpened his mind and now restored his body. Lindon asks, well, did the Black Flames use this water? Like, I feel like this would kind of solve their problems. And Dross says they bought as much as they were allowed. It was one of the ways the facilities, like, maintained itself because they were pouring money into it. But it was just they couldn't afford enough, you know? And then Dross is like, "I spent a long time in the Dreamwell. I won't get to go back ever again." And he feels a little bit sad about it. And it's an interesting moment of, like, nostalgia for him, of realizing that things are changing and that as much as, like, he's enjoying his advancement, he doesn't get to go back ever. And that is a weird mixed feeling, you know? So Lindon hears a noise coming from the way down to the portal. And he's like, "What is that?" Dross is like, "Don't worry about it. Let's go eat some spirit fruits. It's, you know, we'll head down there in a minute." And Lindon's like, "I'm not so sure that's the problem here. I think something's coming out towards us." And just as he's beginning to, like, realize, because of something Dross said, that there's more than one eye of the deep, the gate, like, the hatch crashes open. And Lindon pushes Dross out and says, "Go get Orthos." And when Dross leaves, he has an eye, he has purple skin, he has a mouth with teeth. He's, like, got little, like, tentacles. He is turning into an actual creature. It's a big deal. And Lindon is, like, a little bummed because this distraction is preventing him from really appreciating the magnitude of what is happening here. So Dross flies off and Akura Harmony comes out of the well. And he's basically ignoring Lindon initially. And Lindon's, like, ready for an attack and tries to play it cool for a minute because he isn't sure exactly how he should approach this situation. So he's grateful at first that Harmony isn't, like, outright hostile and attacking him right away. But he starts talking too much. And Harmony starts to say, "Quiet," and do the thing again that he fucking did to Renfei. And Lindon recognizes that gesture and is like, "Fuck that." And he throws himself to one side. He manages to, like, slice off a part of Lindon's robe, I think. And there is this moment when he sees he withdrew the other blue orb that had been inside Lindon's pocket before it was severed. And he sees that it's, like, the eye of the deep. And pulls one out of his own pocket. And he does something that essentially summons Dross back into it, because he can see that it's dead, that there's no spirit in it, that there's nothing going on. And he pulls Dross back into it and then fucking bails and leaves with Dross. And I can't tell you guys, I was so mad about this. I hated it so much. So chapter 15, I only have 5 minutes left. I'm going to have to rush this a little. Forgive me, everybody. Most of what's going on in chapter 15, it's a combo of Lindon having to convince Orthos that we need to go after him and go get Dross. And Orthos is basically initially like, that was an Akura, bitch. Are you high? We aren't going after an Akura. And Lindon says something about how he wishes that he were like more powerful. And he says he took Dross from me, from my hand, more easily than taking a bone from a dog. And Orthos is like, cycle your pure core. And he's like, what do you mean? Okay, I will. And Orthos goes and comes back and he's like, so here's a gate stone. We could just leave. And Lindon's like, are you serious? What? And Orthos is like, yeah, we could just leave. Should we just go? And he gives Lindon the chance. And there's a sense that he kind of hopes that they'll just leave. And finally, Lindon's like, nah, man. And Orthos, as much as it seems like he wanted to just leave, is like, I'm not surprised. He says, once you were weak. That boy is long dead, but his remnant still haunts you. Your weakness, Lindon, is thinking you are weaker than you are. And when Lindon's like, well, I am too weak to break the script on this hatch, and Orthos tells him, convince me that it's worth it and that we are going to be able to beat him. There are supposed to be some spirit fruits in the garden. I still have water from the spirit well. I could reach true gold, but that will take just as long. And Orthos gets all weird and finally says, I could share my power with you, actually. You weren't able to take it before because our spirits probably couldn't have handled the burden, but I think I could do it now. And he's like, of course, Lindon immediately is down to do this. And Orthos is like, I can, but going up against the Akura family. And Lindon finally says, Dross has traveled with us for 4 weeks. Would a dragon abandon an ally in time of need? And finally Orthos is like, God damn it, fine. And he does it. So then we go to Harmony. And it turns out when Harmony was talking about how he knew what the real treasure was and nobody else knew, he had an eye of the deep, which he was going to exchange for one of these like pearls, which I'll get to that spot here. It's a tree that has like these empty spots where the eyes of the deep would have been. Only the 9-Cloud Court had the knowledge they did, but the 9-Cloud delegate hadn't made it inside this time, so Harmony would be the final recipient of Ghostwater's treasure. The tree that loomed over him was made of scripted metal, spiraling from the floor up to the ceiling. Instead of leaves, its branches held metal cages, and inside each cage, a sapphire. Only about 1/3 of the cages were filled, but the chamber still sparkled with light from the eyes of the deep. So he takes one out, and he puts it in one of the cages, and returns it. And in exchange, and the tree like reacts as if it's aware. And it releases, first he can ask a question. And it says, what is the fastest path I may use to reach Underlord? And let's see. The tree trembled for a moment as it contemplated the question. Then a sparkling wave of blue and purple light washed over him, and he knew. The shock of the sudden knowledge left him panicking and disoriented, as though he'd woken up from a dream and not recognized the room around him. So we don't get to hear what the answer is, but I'm super curious. And then this tube comes out, and this pearl rolls down and splashes. And this is what the ghost water is. And he leans over and licks it up. And the second that he consumes it, he feels it like fuse to a part of his mind. And it's not a huge amount of like power in terms of its longevity when he taps into it, but it is a massive boost that could be the difference between life and death in a fight. So it's pretty invaluable in its way. And he's really excited because now he's got a second Eye of the Deep and he thinks he's going to get another one. And he pulls out the second one, aware that Dross inside may make it so that the tree won't accept this one. He's hoping for the best, but he doesn't know. And Dross, for his part, really fights against being reunited with this tree. There's a sense inside of him which he expresses about how he belongs here, but then fights back against that feeling right away. And it's like, I don't know about that, actually. I feel like that might actually be kind of sinister, and maybe I don't want to do that. So, I love this moment. He is kneeling, presenting this, and he feels a dark, furious sun that had dawned above and behind him. It was like feeling a dragon's birth. The aura was only true gold, but it carried such fury and destruction that his spirit trembled. It surprised him. He hadn't thought any true gold could be a threat. Did you feel that? Is that Lindon? I tell you what, let's wait for him. I'm sure we could talk this. Oh my God. I fucking love Dross so much. So he just shoves Dross into the thing, and Dross fights it, but eventually the tree begins to pull the little cage up, and Dross goes silent. And I don't like the implications of that at all, just saying. Meanwhile, Lindon has walked through as a true gold, and he gets the little orientation video of what's his face? I keep wanting to call him Nightwalker. Northstrider. That's him. Who is explaining this is the actual prize that people don't even know is there, and congratulations, you're being allowed to have a taste of this because you're worthy. It's a really it feels like winning a game show or something, and I love that this comes at the end of him having to make that huge jump down the hatch, and Orthos hesitating and hesitating and hesitating until finally Lindon assures him it's fine. And then when he's like, but you can just wait for me if you want. And then Orthos finally jumps, and when he gets to the bottom, he's like, a dragon does not hesitate. And Lindon's like, okay, I mean, you did, but you know what? I'm just going to let that one slide. I enjoy Orthos because he does talk a lot of shit. And Lindon, meanwhile, as he's walking through this and getting this little orientation thing from Northstrider, is realizing that the world is really on the edge, because when what's her face, the Blood Shadow Shumei, was that her name? When she left, her using that gate stone caused additional cracking. So there is less time than they thought they had. And he sees the tree ahead of him and Akura Harmony kneeling there. And return the eye of the deep to the tree, Northstrider instructed, golden eyes turning to the massive scripted device. You may ask one question and receive one drop of ghost water, and for the rest of your life, know that you are in my debt. And I was just like, all right, Northstrider, shit, no reason to rub it in. Jesus Christ, he's really feeling himself. I mean, I guess he's worked hard, so he does get to feel himself, but also, like, cool it, okay, dude? Yeah, you're really awesome. We all agree. Get over it. Also, I do like that he gets this orientation, because I assume that he is going to beat the snot out of Harmony, and then he is going to get to take the prize. And he wouldn't know what to do with the prize if it weren't for this orientation that he's given. So, he needed that. I am so excited, guys, and I can't tell you how mad I was that I had to stop reading right there. Oh, I was so mad. So, I'm really excited because I get to cover the next section tomorrow. Yay. I will see you all then. I'm over time, as usual. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.